Welcome to Compass Points, the weekly podcast for CompassKnox.com. CompassKnox.com is your best source for news and politics in Knoxville and Knox County. Your hosts today are Scott Barker and Jesse Mayshark, the founders of CompassKnox.com. You can find their daily in-depth coverage and subscribe at CompassKnox.com. The Compass Point podcast is brought to you in conjunction with Almost an Agreement. Almost an Agreement is a layman's attempt to get a handle on the workings in government and politics that we deal with every day. Check them out at almostanagreement.com or subscribe for free on your favorite podcast provider. If you'd like to learn more about the topics discussed on today's podcast, go to CompassKnox.com and subscribe for in-depth coverage and much more. And now, here are your hosts, Scott and Jesse from CompassKnox.com.
Hello and welcome to Compass Points, the weekly podcast where we talk about Knoxville news, government, politics, education, business, whatever gets our attention. I am Jesse Mayshark, co-founder and co-publisher of Compass, which you can find at CompassKnox.com, joined as always by Scott Barker, also co-founder and co-publisher of Compass. How are you doing on this holiday weekend Friday, Scott?
Well, I am excited about college football season. I always am. It's kind of like the beginning of the holy season for me. So,
for those of you listening from home, Scott is sitting here wearing his Bama cap. The Bama cap is back in honor of the start of the season. How are your Bama guys looking this year, Scott?
Well, they should be pretty darn good. The big question mark is we've got a new coach.
Yeah.
So Kellen DeBoer is his first season there, replacing Nick Saban, and so we'll see how that goes. It didn't work out so well when Bear Bryant was replaced by Ray Perkins back in the day. So,
this is the only Knoxville podcast where you're going to hear more about the Alabama football team than the Vols.
Well, we could talk about Danny White's new salary.
Actually, that's something we should probably talk about today.
Because
we can get into that.
We can talk more about that than we will Alabama. So,
all right. Well, we will talk a little bit about Danny White's generous new appreciation package from the University of Tennessee.
Very much so.
We also had Governor Bill Lee was in town this week to visit the L&N STEM Academy. A little bit of interesting conversation there. We have new population estimates about future growth in Tennessee, which has sort of maybe some good news and some more mixed news. Big new development out at Knox County's Western Edge, Prosperity Crossing. That is moving forward and took a significant step with the assistance of County Commission this past week. But to start us off, Scott, I think probably the big story out of this week, and one that you broke, I should say, first reported in Compass by Mr. Scott Barker, our new what have we been calling it? The multi-use downtown stadium. Pretty soon we're going to be able to have a shorter, more concise way to refer to that, because the big announcement this week was
that it is going to be named Covenant Health Park.
Covenant Health Park.
Covenant Health bought the naming rights for the next 20 years to the stadium. Yeah, for a long time I thought they just might as well make it official and just call it multi-use stadium.
Right.
That just be the name.
Really rolls off the tongue there.
Yeah, but no, Covenant Health, they did not disclose how much they paid for that, but they paid it to Boyd Sports, and they had they tried to keep it kind of under wraps till they had a big major announcement, but I found out it was Covenant.
Scott Barker said, "Let me take a look under that tarp and see what you've got there."
And so I was able to call enough people who I knew who had knowledge of the arrangement who wouldn't speak, wouldn't let me use their names, but they did confirm that it was going to be Covenant Health, and people who, and there was multiple sources and all the various spheres of organizations that work with the stadium. So I was really confident that was actually true. And then that was on ran that on Tuesday. On Wednesday, I'm sorry, and Jim Vandersteeg at Covenant Health and Randy Boyd from Boyd Sports came out and said, yes, it's going to be Covenant Health Park. And then the next day we had an unveiling of the branding and everything else. It's going to look very familiar. The typeface they use for the signage is, at least the renderings indicate, it'll be just like Covenant Health's current logo and everything else. And but it's going to be all over the place. It's going to be visible, very visible from Hall of Fame Drive. You'll be able to look down and see that there. It's going to be on the State of Tennessee shaped scoreboard. It's going to be at all the entrances, all that stuff. If you show up in scrubs, you'll look like you're at home there. So,
yeah. Well, so let's talk about a couple aspects of this. One is, you mentioned we don't know how much this deal is actually for, like what Covenant Health is paying to have their name all over the place. This is a publicly owned stadium. So what is the reason that we don't know how much they're paying for that?
I have asked. I will ask more formally in the future. The main thing is when the development deal was made between the Sports Authority, that's the city county joint sports authority that is actually going to own the stadium. When they made their development deal with Boyd Sports, they did something a little different than most ballparks. Most AA minor league baseball teams pay $300,000, maybe a little bit more, $300,000, a little bit more a year in a lease, and they share revenues with the entity that owns the stadium, the government entity that owns the stadium. The Sports Authority decided not to do that, and what they did is they're going to charge $1 million a year, which is 3 times the normal lease, but there's no revenue sharing. And what that does is it gives the Sports Authority, they know they're going to get $1 million a year that's going to be applied to the debt service, and they don't have to worry about whether ticket sales are up or down, or concession sales are up or down. It'll be the same amount every year. So that was the trade-off they made. So and part of that was that Boyd Sports would be able to negotiate the naming rights deal, and there may be more naming rights to come.
There's other areas of the stadium
areas
that
inside
could be
the
named.
stadium, yeah, it could be named. I mean, one of the things that
Compass Corridor, something like that, right? You have Compass Corridor for one of the Compass Causeway.
We might be able to afford a urinal somewhere.
One of the things he mentioned was, there's that water tower that was on the property when Boyd bought it and got taken down so they could build a stadium, and they're going to be using that, and it could be named, something like that. But anyway, I think they're obviously because it was a transaction between one private company and another private company, that it's a private business,
not subject to public scrutiny.
However, since Boyd Sports is the managing tenant, they actually manage the stadium on behalf of the Public Sports Authority. The argument can, and probably will, be made that its records in relation to the management of the stadium, or I should say, Covenant Health Park, would be public records.
Right. There's going to have to be some level of reporting from Boyd Sports to the Sports Authority.
Yeah, and
we'll see what that looks like and
yes,
what we can glean from it. So the other question that I heard raised by a couple of people, Covenant Health, for those who don't know, it is on the one hand one of our largest healthcare systems here in Knox County. It is also a nonprofit with a mission to provide healthcare. And, of course, they do a lot of marketing already. You see billboards for Covenant and so forth. But the question that I heard asked, and saw this on Facebook a few places, was, how does this further Covenant Health's mission? Like, basically, however much they're paying, and we don't know. It's Boyd Sports is paying $1 million a year total. So some percentage of that is going to now come from naming rights, but we don't know how much. Whatever that is, how did Covenant present this as a good way to further their healthcare mission?
Well, Vandersteeg did address that. He talked about how their mission is to promote health and wellness in the community, to improve the quality of life through health and wellness, and talked about the stadium being a place where sports happen. There's going to be more than just Smokies baseball and One Knox SC soccer. There will be we don't know yet because it's not open yet, but probably high school games could be played there, other tournaments could be played there, other events, other sporting events. The concourse at the stadium is going to be open year round, so you can go there and how people go to the mall and walk around the mall. You'll be able to go, if you want to, you can go to the stadium and walk the concourse, and so it'll be open, during the daytime hours all the time. So they look at the stadium as being a facility that promotes health and wellness, and so that's why one of the reasons that they thought it would be a good fit for them.
Not totally sure how your average stadium concession stand factors into health and wellness, but if you have to walk from one end of the stadium to the other to get your fries and beer and whatever, maybe you're at least getting a few steps.
Well, and you're going to have to walk a pretty good ways from wherever you park too.
Right. True.
So that's a big concern that a lot of people have. But yeah, and Vandersteeg said, listen, it's better to go, come down here and go to a ball game than it is to sit on your couch and watch a ball game.
Fair point.
So, if you're going to, drink beer and eat a hot dog and watch a game at home, or get a beer, eat a hot dog, and watch a game down there, at least, like you said, you get in your steps.
And maybe they'll even have some healthful options at the concession stands.
It would not be surprising. It's one of the things that they've teased a little bit is, at some point, they're going to be announcing there's going to be restaurants you can enter from the street level, and presumably inside as well. Some of the concessions might be affiliated with a restaurant, and they've talked about announcing those, but they haven't yet. So
more announcements to come. I mean, basically between now and the spring, when this is supposed to open, we're probably going to be getting more and more announcements about specific details of the operation.
Yeah, we will. I know the one restaurant that Boyd has mentioned, but it's been a long time since he mentioned it, was Jackie's Dream.
Mm-hmm.
Being there, I don't know. He probably hasn't. We probably haven't heard anything about that for a year or so. So
right. So may or may
things
not
could
still
happen.
be in the
Yeah,
mix.
you never know. But he wants to. He said he wants to have a real showcase local businesses doing that. So
All right. Well, certainly more to come from the stadium. And again, if you haven't been down there in a while to take a look, definitely recommend it because it is really coming together. You can see all the different parts of it, and it's quite a project.
Yeah, they've one thing too is they've got they have a retractable pitcher's mound, so they can make the entire field flat when they need to, and you can see it when if you're there. They had an observation deck for us for the media when we went there, and it's all framed in, and then in October it'll really start looking like a stadium because they'll be putting in the sod and installing the scoreboard and things like that. So it's in the next couple of months it's really going to start shaping up to look like a stadium, or I guess as we should start saying, Covenant Health Park.
Covenant Health Park, right. Okay, well, speaking of major developments, there was news in another one this week. This one called Prosperity Crossing, which is out at the far western edge of the county. You have probably seen some of the work going on this if you have driven I-40 past the Watt Road exit in the past year. Up there on the north side of the interstate, there's that big hill, and you can see there's been a lot of grading there. There's some big machines moving things around up there. And we got a tour of what is going on there. And honestly, what's really interesting is that what you can see from the interstate right now is only a little piece of what's actually going on there. And if you drive up Everett Road, which runs north there from the exit, or kind of around a curve, you can see from the road. And then, of course, we were with the developer, Steve Maddox, and so we're able to go up and drive through the whole thing. But a lot of the actual work is kind of happening on the other side of that ridge, and they have moved just a tremendous amount of dirt there. They're forming multiple pads. So this is a large development. It's about 230 acres in total that is going to revolve around a set of sports fields. And so that you cannot see those from the interstate right now. Those are kind of on the other side of the ridge. They've got a massive pad cleared, which is going to hold 6 or 7 sports fields, and then another pad that will have the opportunity for another set of sports amenities to be determined to some degree. On the front side, facing the interstate, they're looking at having 4 or 5 new hotels with 150 or so residents each, so 600, 700 new hotel rooms coming there. Restaurants, including sit-down places, fast food drive-thrus for people coming off the interstate. There's, at the far back end of the development, an apartment complex of about 326 units. And so, taken all together, this is really and then there's a couple of other pads for various kinds of retail or office space, and there's different entities that are looking at getting involved there. But this is a huge mixed-use development that they're doing there, and it's been talked about in the public sphere because they are getting some public assistance with this. The development of this whole thing has been a fairly long process. It's been almost 20 years since Steve Maddox bought sort of the first 100 acres or so there. And so you think back, this is sort of in the 2004, 5, 6 era. And at the time, they were looking at doing some new big box commercial development. Well, then, of course, we had the recession. Everything kind of stopped for a while. By the time in the teens, they circled back around to looking at what they could do there. It was pretty clear that the big box era was already fading, what with so much commerce moving to the internet. And so then they were kind of trying to figure out what to do with this. And they were really inspired by a study that Visit Knoxville did 6 or 7 years ago that identified a need for more sports facilities in Knox County to handle all of the different kinds. I mean, soccer is the biggest identified need because, as any of you who are parents currently probably know, soccer has been our fastest growing youth sport here. It's just leagues mushrooming all over the place, and not enough fields to serve them. And so that's going to be the biggest initial focus, is providing facilities both for, local leagues to play there during the week, but what they're really looking at this being is a place that would be a destination for regional kinds of tournaments, maybe even could host, state level kinds of tournaments. And that would work hand in hand with having the hotels there, because if people are coming from out of town, then there'd be a place for them to stay. Of course, the hotels will also just be doing normal interstate hotel traffic there. Conveniently located, maybe not for people who are going to downtown Knoxville, but like, let's say that you're coming to town for work-related reasons having to do with Oak Ridge. Well, that's a relatively easy place to get to, and then of course the residential part of it too. So they got a TIF from County Commission last year, tax increment financing, which basically will allow them to use a portion of the new property taxes that would be generated by the new improvements they do, because when you improve property, you raise its value, your taxes go up. So they have, I think, an $8.9 million tax increment financing package that they can use. That was less than they wanted. They initially requested $13 million there. And when they only got that $8.9 million last year, one of the things they then engineered out of the project, because they said they couldn't afford it anymore, was improvements to the local water lines, which are owned by West Knox Utility District, provides water and sewer in that part of the county. And the current lines out there are pretty small. And, for example, Steve Maddox said that there's only enough pressure there right now. They do have a fire hydrant they put in. There's only enough pressure there to basically run one hose. So if you had two things that needed to be responded to at the same time, there's not enough water pressure there to do it. So they wanted to put in these bigger pipes, and they came back to County Commission with a new agreement that was approved this past week. The deal is actually with the county's Industrial Development Board. So all County Commission did was give permission to the Industrial Development Board to make this deal with Maddox. But what this is going to do essentially is use a portion of the hotel motel taxes that are going to be generated by these new hotels, and that money, up to about $2 to $2.5 million, whatever it costs essentially to put in these new water lines, will be used to reimburse them for the cost of doing that. So the developers will put in the water lines. The water lines will be dedicated to the West Knox Utility District. They're going to be owned by the utility, but paid for by the developers. Then the developers will be reimbursed by money out of the new hotels that'll be there. So altogether, that's, it gets you up in the vicinity of $11 to $12 million in various kinds of public financing that's going to go into the project. It can always be a little bit controversial, government subsidizing big commercial developments. The city of Knoxville tends to use its tax increment financing more to redevelop blighted areas. This is not a blighted area. It's just a big open hillside in West Knox County. But because it is, they're putting in this tiered terraced development on this big hill, there is a lot of expense involved in it, and they do have a lot of infrastructure improvements that they have to do to try to fit this thing in there. And so that's their case for getting these various kinds of public assistance for it. It's a big thing.
Yeah, it almost makes a solid developed link. I mean, once it's developed, from Farragut to Hardin Valley.
Yeah.
Right now, Hardin Valley's kind of up by itself at the edge of the county, the northern edge of the county, and this seems like it's going to kind of make a connection almost between. I'm not sure, better because you actually went on this tour, how far the northern end of this development is from Hardin Valley itself.
It does get up close to the far western end of Hardin Valley, and it's going hand in hand with, first of all, these water line improvements, but then Knox County also has plans sort of alongside all of this to both widen and straighten Everett Road there going north from the exit, because right now Everett is a little 2-lane country road basically, and it's pretty windy, and the county wants to be able to accommodate more traffic, both for the purposes of this development, but also to provide a better entrance and exit from that end of Hardin Valley, because as we all know, the main ways people are getting in and out of Hardin Valley these days are either off of Pellissippi Parkway to Hardin Valley Drive coming from that end, or taking Campbell Station Road from that exit, which is also a windy little 2-lane road that goes up over a hill. And both of those get very backed up at rush hour. And so the long-term hope here is that even though this new development is going to, of course, create its own whole set of new traffic and users there, that by providing the better infrastructure at that end, it will still also give better entrance into Buttermilk Road there, that then goes up and curves around and joins with Hardin Valley Road. So yes, all of that is contemplated. The way Steve Maddox puts it is kind of opening up that western end of the county. This is right on the county line, and actually a teeny little piece of this development edges over into Loudoun County. So Loudoun County will benefit a little bit from some of the taxes that are generated from it too. Also, interestingly, on the Loudoun County side, it is adjacent to a bigger piece of property that Maddox also owns, because it's his old family farm. It's the Maddox family farm, been there for generations. And that property extends kind of from the edge of this new development basically all the way to Melton Hill Lake. And Maddox has thoughts about what else might be able to go there. Nothing he's talking about publicly right now, but there's the potential for even more kind of to go in on that side. That would be more in Loudoun County, because that's where that property is. But anyway, if you've been driving the interstate and seeing this, what's going on there, and just kind of wondered about it, that's what it is. And you're going to start to see construction happening here, over the next 12 to 18 months, as, sort of one piece at a time of this is going to be put in. So it'll probably be under construction for quite some time. And they are also counting then on having that, the public construction. The Tennessee Department of Transportation also has plans to redo and do some improvements to that interchange, although they haven't really spelled them out yet. So they're still kind of waiting to see what happens there, but going to be a lot of activity basically around there. And, what they're saying is that this will provide some amenities also in terms of the sports fields and, whatever restaurants and other kinds of things are going to be there for people who live in that area. Because you do have a lot of people there, at that point, you're kind of on the west end of Farragut. And then of course, people in Hardin Valley, who don't have a lot of close, easy options to get. They can get to Turkey Creek, of course, but you have to deal with a lot of traffic to get there. So they say they're also going to just serve that, still fairly rapidly growing population at that end of the county.
And one of the things that a lot of times we don't think about, because we have the Knox looking out kind of mindset, or Knoxville looking out mindset. But I grew up in Rome County. People in Rome County, people in Loudoun County, they will be going there too. Absolutely.
Anderson County.
County.
It's right at the corner where it's close to all of those. And,
they will. That will definitely be a market that they will tap.
Yep, for sure. That is part of their hope. Okay. Well, speaking of growth in Knox County, Scott, we have some new and growth in Tennessee. We have some new population estimates that came out this week, looking basically 15 years or so into the future. What are they saying?
Yeah, the Boyd Center for Business and Economic Research at the University of Tennessee came up with, they looked at population figures and did some projections comparing what the census estimate for 2022 was, and projecting what the population would be in 2040. One of the things they overall that Tennessee is going to continue to grow about 12.6% during that time frame to almost 8 million be our population right now, or at least in 2022, it was at 7.9 million. So there's going to be that they're anticipating the growth will continue, but there are a couple of the details were kind of interesting. One is the population is going to be older. The adults 65 and over will increase 25% over that time period, and the cohort that's over the age of 85, which is the oldest that you looked at, is going to go at 72%. So
more people living longer, basically.
More people living longer, and so the population will definitely be getting grayer as we go along. It's also going to be more diverse. One of the things that they talked about is almost 60% of the growth in population between now and 2040 will be due to Hispanics moving to East Tennessee. So so that will be right now, or in 2022, the estimate was about 450,000 Hispanics lived in Tennessee. By 2040, it'll be 750,000. So that's a pretty hefty growth. And of course, one of the things that does is the population that is white will be lower, and so the population that is non-white will be higher. It'll be the non-white population right now, or the white population right now is 72.9%, and by 2040 that's going to drop to 69.2%. So we'll have a little bit more than 30% of the population will be people who are non-white, and that's one of the things they did not do is say where in the state most of that will occur. Of course, in recent history, a lot of that growth has been in Middle Tennessee, around Nashville, but of course you're going to have Blue Oval City opening up in near Memphis, and who knows what else between now and 2040.
Right. Well, and most of the growth has been going to the state's urban areas in general.
Oh, yeah.
And probably you would expect to see that continue. I do think it's interesting. Of course, there's so much talk about immigration in the presidential campaign and at that political level, but there are multiple studies out there making a quite persuasive case that if you look at the United States as a whole, and from what you're saying, probably also if you look at Tennessee, a huge percentage of our growth is coming from immigration. Mm-hmm. There was a study I was reading about in Bloomberg recently that made the case that almost all of our population growth and almost all of our economic growth over the last 4 or 5 years has really been driven by immigration. That's what is continuing to power the economy, because our birth rate among natural born citizens in the United States is sort of barely at replacement level. And so most of our growth is really coming from that. Now, of course, some of that, if we really got some of the kinds of national policies and changes that are being discussed to some degree in the presidential campaign, maybe some of those trends would change. But that really is where a lot of our growth is coming from. And given that the graying population is not so much that, it's providing the economic base that can help take care of,
support the folks who are 85 and older, who are going to be make up a larger and larger share of population. So.
Well, interesting stuff. Okay, we had a visit from Governor Bill Lee to a Knox County school this week. He stopped by L&N STEM Academy, which is an interesting school. It's a magnet school that's in the old L&N station there at the north end of World's Fair Park. It opened in 2011. Actually, it was partly spearheaded by Bill Lee's predecessor, Bill Haslam. When he was mayor of Knoxville, he helped put the deal together with the school system that converted that, at the time, sort of underutilized building into what is now a Knox County high school. And as its name implies, it has a STEM emphasis, that is science, technology, engineering, and math. And it takes a little bit more of a college-style approach to how it structures its classes and its days. It has very high academic standards. I am a parent of an L&M STEM student myself, and I can tell you that he loves the school, but his freshman year was a pretty big adjustment. Their expectations are high. It is also the highest ranked high school in the county if you just look at sort of academic achievement and percentage of students who go into four-year schools and all of those things. And one point that its principal, Jim Allen, made to Governor Lee on his visit was that they achieve that, and also they have very high, ACT scores and that kind of thing. They achieve that with a school population that is just drawn by lottery. There's no entrance exam. You don't have to have, certain GPA or anything. You just have to be a Knox County student. And in fact, they actually set aside 10% of their seats for students from out of county, because there's interest from out of county students too. So they have 70 or 80 students a year who actually come into Knox County and bring their state funding with them into the school system. But Allen was saying to Lee that they're not cherry picking the best students in the county. Now, you could argue that a school with a STEM emphasis that also does not have some of the features that people look for in high schools, like a football team, and some of those kinds of things, it's not going to appeal to everybody. And so there's bound to be some self-selection among the students who apply. But it's actually a fairly diverse student population, both racially and economically. And they're performing at a very high level. And so that's why Lee came to visit. He's made a big emphasis on STEM subjects in K through 12 schools, and the need to produce a prepared workforce for the future of Tennessee. And what was interesting about the way he kind of framed this in his visit was, this is a school of choice. It's not a school that anybody is zoned to. You have to choose to apply there and go there. He, of course, has been making a big push for quote-unquote school choice statewide in the form of more charter schools and, of course, in the form of school vouchers, which he is promising to bring back a proposal for statewide school vouchers in the coming year. And so he kind of looked around L&N, and then in talking with school administrators and then with reporters at the end of his tour, he said that this just kind of reinforced the point he's making, that, look, this is an option that parents have, and it's great for parents and students to have options, and we should have more options of all kinds for people who want all kinds of different kinds of education for their children, and that this shows that works, basically. Now, voucher opponents look at something like L&N and other magnet schools and say, this shows that we don't need vouchers. This shows that you can provide a whole range of choices and options within the existing public school system. L&N is just another Knox County public high school. It's under the governance of the school system and the school board, and that basically this is what you can do if you keep public money in the public schools, and that if you start taking public money out of public schools and sending them to private schools and religious schools, it's actually going to make it harder for public systems to provide these kinds of choices. So, I don't know which one of those perspectives is more persuasive. I think it's just a sign that you can kind of, when it comes to education, depending on your ideological perspective, you can kind of fit things into different categories. But I do think that it certainly makes a case, and the popularity of the school, they have they only have about 150 slots per grade level, and it's not uncommon for them to get 500 or more applicants for the 9th grade seats, because that's when people want to come in. That demand drops off as you get farther along, just because, once people start in a school, they tend to want to stay there. But you could look at that demand and say, well, it would be good to have more options of some kind, whether those are provided through the public schools or some other avenue.
And one of the things is that could actually end up happening through the 865 academies. Mm-hmm. The school system is set up, because each school is going to have its own identity,
right? Specialized programming.
And you can look at Fulton High School. If you're in high school and you want to either become a firefighter, a police officer, thinking about going to law school, because there's a lot of training there that way. Healthcare. Mm-hmm. Fulton is set up for you, and is it's not a magnet school, but its curriculum is set up for you, and you are you can go there and kind of get a head start on your career. I mean, they have a fire truck.
Right, because they're now right next to the new public safety complex.
Right.
And Fulton actually is a magnet school they have a magnet communications program that's been in place there for some time. Sure. They've got a student radio station, student TV production unit, and that kind of thing.
I didn't know that was technically considered a magnet.
Yeah, it is. Well, that's a magnet program. And even for high schools that are not magnet schools, basically any student in any Knox County school can apply to transfer to any other school. The controlling factor there is that students who are zoned for that school get first dibs, essentially, on open seats. So there have to be open seats. But, and that's another argument that people who are against vouchers make, is that, like, our systems already have choice. It's not, you hear people use phrases like students who are quote-unquote trapped in certain schools, and that's really not true. Students who want to transfer, many students in Knox County already transfer between different high schools. And I think, as you're saying, with the further development and specialization of those 865 academies, some of those are going to start drawing students with particular interest to apply to different schools. And that's probably going to continue as well. But it was an interesting visit. I will say that I trailed along with several other local reporters as the governor visited the school. And on the one hand, this was a dog and pony show. It was a show and tell. But Lee seemed genuinely interested. He had several fairly detailed conversations at different points with the principal, with several of the teachers whose classrooms he went into. He spent a lot of time there, actually. I talked to one of his communications people who said that actually they didn't have anything else immediately planned for the rest of the day, because it was on Thursday, kind of heading into the holiday weekend. And so, often when you see like a governor at something like this, they have to get to 6 other things. And so it's often just a quick drive-by. But this was actually a pretty intensive visit, and people at the school seemed to enjoy the attention, but that was interesting. All right, let's talk about Danny White. What's going on with our athletic director?
Well, the Danny White has the University of Tennessee Athletics Department just finished its overall best year ever as far as its on the field or on the court or on the track accomplishments. Oddly enough, one where the football program wasn't the leading one. Of course, baseball was. They won a national championship, first one ever. But there's also been improvements in academic progress and other things. So Chancellor Don D. Plowman announced that White would be getting a contract extension, and she didn't announce the raise, but it's in the contract. The contract now will run believe it was going to run out in 2028. Now it's going to go to 2030. It's going to be a rolling 6-year contract. So every year when it comes up for renewal, or every at a certain date, another year's added. So he's always going to be under contract for 6 years. The salary, he got a 25% boost. Went from $2.2 million base salary, $2.2 million, to $2.75 million moving forward. I think that obviously UT thinks that he's well worth that for the accomplishments they've had. He also gets has a bonus pool. If he reaches certain benchmarks, some of them have to do with success on the field, like football or in the court, in basketball. If they get to the NCAA basketball tournament, he gets a little bonus, gets a little bit more the further they go. Same thing's going to be true with football in the college football playoff. Also, one of the things that they were particularly proud of is that there's an award called the Director's Cup that goes to the top college athletics department overall. Excellence in all sports, is where that is. And Tennessee finished number 3 this year, which is the highest ever. And he gets bonus. He'll get an additional bonus when he reaches that benchmark. That pool is doubled to $600,000. So now he wouldn't, obviously wouldn't get all $600,000 every year, but that would be the maximum he'll be able to get. And they announced that we're going right into football season. They are playing an opponent in their sister campus at Chattanooga on Saturday. This will be airing after that's over, but going into the day, everybody was pretty certain that UT would that the Knoxville campus would beat the Chattanooga guys pretty handily. So
yes, if you are listening to this in the wake of a loss by the Vols on Saturday, then something has gone terribly wrong.
Well, the last time that happened, the last time Chattanooga beat UT, Chattanooga was a private school, it was back in the 50s, and there was a riot. So, hopefully there wouldn't be a riot if they upset Tennessee, but they odds are they're not going to.
Right. It to start the season off playing UT Chattanooga does feel a little bit like starting with kind of an intramural skirmish, as a warm up.
Although one thing is that people, probably most people don't realize is that Chattanooga's actually a really good team. Now they play in the lower division, the FBS division, or FCS division, and but they're ranked in the top 10. So and if anybody says, well, yeah, so what? Well, just Thursday night, one of the premier top 10 teams in FCS, North Dakota State, came within a couple of yards of beating Colorado at Colorado. So it's it happens from time to time, but I think it's very doubtful.
And let's just practice here. It's Nico Yamaleava.
Nico, just stop at Nico. That's my rule for the rest of the year. Just stop at Nico. Everybody's going to know who you're talking about. You don't have to go any further.
Well, see,
Seth Barber, thank you, our producer. Yes, that is what most radio people seem to have done. They all talk about Nico.
I have a problem with this as a Velvet Underground fan, because to me there's only one Nico, and it's not Nico Yamaleava. Nevertheless, I also just kind of like saying Yamaleava. Samoan name.
Well, I'll let you say that.
And since we're trying to sub in and make sure this doesn't turn into an Alabama football show, I'll throw in what little bit of I've been following on it is that Nico is in Heisman conversation. Long shot on it, but he is, and that's the first time we've had a UT football player that is legitimately and real people talking about Heisman. And so that'll be fun to see how that progresses throughout the year.
Yeah. Well, one thing that's kind of funny, there's been a lot of hype about him, and rightly so. I mean, he was very talented coming out of high school. It is a lot of, you listen to on the sports radio talk shows and things like that. It's kind of the second coming, and he's got there are a lot of expectations about him, and he can be good, and people will be disappointed.
Sure. And I think again, to make this a sports show for just a second, I think that is the reality of the UT football program right now. Good is not good enough. For Vols fans this season, expectations
have been raised.
You know, especially with Saban being gone. Georgia's still the powerhouse Georgia is, but I think there'll be some very, very, very upset people burning bunk beds and whatnot, like we had a few years back. If we're not at least 2 in the SEC East, Georgia being the only one above us, I think that's
there's no East anymore. But yeah,
well, I forget about that. I'm still trying to get through the restructuring of programs because we got to deal with this Oklahoma and other UT. In
the increasingly misnamed Southeastern Conference.
Exactly, or you could be the Big Ten and have 16 teams,
right, yeah.
However that works.
All right. Well, I guess go Vols, right, Scott?
Yeah, and if Danny White definitely says go Vols. So it's been the big orange has been big green for him. So
it's been good to him. Okay, well, let's look ahead to the coming week. Of course, the first thing that happens this week is Monday is Labor Day. So I hope you're all able to enjoy that in whatever means you wish. We are actually taking that day off. There will not, unless there's some kind of breaking news, there will not be a Compass Daily newsletter on Monday. This was something that we had to work out between labor and management in our own company. It's a little bit complicated there because Scott and I are co-stewards of the Compass Union, but we are also the merciless capitalist bosses running the show, but we all agreed to take the day off.
Yeah, well, the union part of me took a baseball bat and whomped the management part of me over the head with it. So management caved, and so we get to take a day off unless there's breaking news.
Unless something happens. Then on Tuesday, actually a whole bunch of things happen. Nothing happens on Monday. A whole bunch of things happen on Tuesday. Starting at 10 in the morning, there will be a swearing-in ceremony for the newly elected county officials at the Tennessee Theater. That includes the property assessor, law director, and multiple members of county commission and the school board. And then county commission and the school board will quite quickly after that actually be in action. County Commission is having a special called meeting at 1 p.m. Monday in the main assembly room of the City County building, where they will do their annual reorganization, which means electing a chair and a vice chair and then appointing people to various committees. Current Commission Chair Terry Hill said last week that she's not looking to serve another year. She served 1 year in that seat. Current Commission Vice Chair Gina Oster is generally expected to throw her name in to be the new chair. And in talking with several commissioners, I talked to Commissioner Kim Frazier, who other people had suggested, is a likely future chair. She is supporting Oster for the chair position, but said that she would be honored and happy to serve as vice chair if her colleagues so chose. There may be other people whose names get thrown in, but I'd say there's a fairly good chance that that's who our next chair and vice chair are going to be, Oster and Frazier. The school board then has its monthly work session later that afternoon at 5 p.m., but they are having a special meeting at 4:30 p.m. for their own reorganization and to welcome in their new board members. And current board chair Betsy Henderson has been in that seat for a year, and she said she would be happy to serve a second year if her colleagues so choose. That makes it, I think, pretty likely that she will serve another year, and that has been kind of standard in recent times, both on the school board and on commission, that there tends to be deference to letting people serve a second year if they want to. And given the partisan makeup of the school board, it's a 5-4 Republican majority. That means the chair will be a Republican. Henderson is a Republican, and there aren't that many others. There's a couple of new members. They're not going to be the chair. So I think it's likely that Henderson serves another year as chair, most likely with Steve Triplett continuing as vice chair. And then the school board will hold their work session where they will be talking about items on the agenda for their Thursday meeting. Both of those meetings are both the Tuesday and Thursday meetings are at 5 p.m. in the Summer Place boardroom. And then also on Tuesday, Scott, back over in the main assembly room, city council's in action.
Yeah, Tuesday's going to be an action-packed day, although it's going to end not with a bang but a whimper, because there's not a whole lot on city council's agenda. There are no ordinances on second reading to be considered. There's just very, very little. One thing that is kind of interesting, however, is city council hears appeals from planning commission, sometimes the board of zoning appeals. We've got a board of zoning appeals decision that has been appealed to them. There's a company that I had never heard of called Liquid Environmental Solutions. They are a grease recycling business, the only one in Knoxville, they say, and it's over on in East Knoxville, just north of I-40 near Cherry Street, and they've been over there since 2017, and the codes officer here in Knoxville, Peter Ahrens, who's the head of that office, determined that they needed to build a new building, and that they're out of compliance with the city code, and they are fighting that tooth and nail. And what's interesting about it, in 2017, they got their plans approved. The contention is that they have these storage tanks where I presume grease is stored. They've got storage tanks on the property. They're open air, and apparently some folks nearby have started complaining about the smell. And Ahrens has gone in and told them they need to basically enclose them in a building. And they said, well, wait a minute, you approved this in 2017, exactly the way it is. We haven't changed anything. And so we're kind of, and the law the code didn't change. So
just the local impact.
The local impact. Well, it's kind of one of those things where, apparently the complaints about the smells have been a little more recent, not 2018, not 2019. When they first started up.
We've had a particularly hot summer, which probably doesn't help in this conversation. Quick, because I when you first brought this up, I was thinking like engine grease, automotive grease, but we're talking fryer grease, or is this both things?
I'm not sure what all the
okay. I was just like, because I was thinking like that's the one, especially in the heat, that's really going to kick it out.
Probably more restaurant grease. I would think, just because I think there's a much higher volume of that gets produced every day.
And there's been a lot of companies, like there's a school bus that used to run around town that ran on fryer grease.
Yeah, I think there's
not a school bus, but
there's a better market for that. So.
Okay, it just kind of hit me and was curious which grease we were talking about.
I will say that
I just found out about that this morning.
Okay,
because they put out their agenda packet on Thursday night, and I looked at that this morning for the first thing. Did not read through.
I was just thinking maybe some of the complaints are they're really excited about the French fries they're about to go get, and then they realize that's not what's happening.
Maybe
they're being enticed. Well, I worked at a restaurant as a teenager, and we I don't know if this was in compliance with codes or even actually what ended up happening with this stuff once the barrel was full, but we had a grease barrel out back that was our grease management system. And every night the cooks or somebody from the kitchen, sometimes I had to do it, would clean out the grease trap and take it out and pour it in that barrel. And let me tell you, that barrel was pretty gnarly. It smelled bad. There was often a layer of maggots on top of it. It was just like nothing anybody wanted anything to do with. So, it can be unpleasant to deal with the after effects of that for sure.
Well, the thing about it is, in the United States, all restaurants just about have to have grease traps and things like that. Keep it out of the sewage system. And it was kind of an interesting thing in London. They never had those, and they have like these big blobs of grease the size of double-decker buses that'll clog
burst
up
the pipes.
That'll clog up the sewage system in London. It's pretty a pretty odd thing. It doesn't really happen here, although there is a lot of people still do dump grease down their pipes.
Yes, and
it does build up in the system. And
right, your local utilities really prefer you not do that. They prefer that you, if you're going to dispose of grease, throw it away, put it in like a plastic bag, and put it in your trash. That's actually a more environmentally friendly thing to do than to pour it down your drain.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, on that delightful note. We hope you're all enjoying some nice fried food this weekend and not thinking too much about where the grease is going.
Well, it's Labor Day. Of course, there's going to be a lot of fried food.
Absolutely. We'll let you get back to enjoying your weekend, and that is what we intend to be doing as well. And we'll be back to talk to you next week. Our production is by Lord Seth Barber here at Barbarian Productions. Thank you so much, Seth. Our theme music is by Will Wright. Have a good one, everybody.
Welcome to Compass Points, the weekly podcast for CompassKnox.com. CompassKnox.com is your best source for news and politics in Knoxville and Knox County. Your hosts today are Scott Barker and Jesse Mayshark, the founders of CompassKnox.com. You can find their daily in-depth coverage and subscribe at CompassKnox.com. The Compass Point podcast is brought to you in conjunction with Almost an Agreement. Almost an Agreement is a layman's attempt to get a handle on the workings in government and politics that we deal with every day. Check them out at almostanagreement.com or subscribe for free on your favorite podcast provider. If you'd like to learn more about the topics discussed on today's podcast, go to CompassKnox.com and subscribe for in-depth coverage and much more. And many thanks to William Wright for composing our theme song. Compass Points is a partnership of Barking Shark Media and Barbarian Productions, and recorded by Lord Seth A. Barber at Barbarian Studios, Knoxville, Tennessee.